Hi there, my name is Jasmine, and today I'm going to be presenting to you genetically modified foods, a specious solution. My presentation is on why the United States should ban genetically modified food. Here's a brief introduction about what I will be covering. I'll be going over the history of GMOs, how they are made very quickly, why they should be banned, the reason why I believe they are a specious solution, a brief conclusion, as well as my reference page, of course. So here's a brief history of GMOs. Basically, crossbreeding, selective breeding has been around for tens of thousands of years. A lot of people understand that farmers have been taking desirable traits from different animals like cattle and corn for as long as we can possibly remember. But this shows when we started really digging into the science of it and really honing in on the possibilities of GMOs. So in 1866, Gregory Mendel was figuring out how to combine two different kinds of pea varieties, and he identified the basics process of genetics. And then in 1982, the FDA approved the first consumer GMO product, which was actually human insulin to treat diabetes. And that just opened the world, and I think was a good note to start on to introduce GMOs, as it was such a positive solution. And then in 1922, the first hybrid corn is produced and sold commercially. In the 1990s, then the huge wave of GMOs was produced through summer squash, soybeans, papayas, tomatoes, all of these foods that are very much consumer driven, consumer needed. And in 2005, GMO alfalfa and sugar beets were available for sale in the US. You can see that just in the last 100 years, how much the use of GMOs has grown, changed, and developed, and how quickly that has taken place. Very quickly on how GMOs are made. GMO stands for genetically modified organism. Another word that is used to describe genetically modified food is GE, which stands for genetically engineered. Scientists are constantly trying to come up with new words to describe this food because of how important the public's view on genetically modified food is. And as of right now, GMOs does have a bad rep, puts a bad taste in people's mouth, and in many scientists' eyes and in a lot of policymakers' eyes, what the opinions of the public and community is very important. So that is something to look out for. They're constantly changing how these foods are identified. So GMOs stand for foods that have been created through genetic engineering, and the process is basically 4 steps. You identify the gene, you copy that information from the gene that you really want because it has certain desirable traits. Then that DNA is inserted into another organism, and then that new organism is grown, producing whatever traits were desired. Here are the reasons that GMOs should be banned from the United States. The first being the increased need for insecticide use and insect resistance in conjunction with that. So because GMOs can be created in such a way that makes them stronger, more nutrient bearing, that also has proven to correlate with an increased need for insecticide use. And that shows that means that the insects are going to be getting stronger, and more farmers are going to be having to use stronger and more of that chemical, which is not only expensive for especially small scale farmers, but also poses its own health risks that have been proven by science to not be good for the locals' health, or it's getting into that food that is going to be shipped around the United States. My second reason I really want to bring up is the absence of long-term studies. When I briefly went over the history, you can see just how quickly GMOs have been incorporated into our food industry and how there really is an absence of long-term studies. We do not know, scientists do not know the long-term effects of consuming these genetically modified food. That can also be shown in the counter argument where these foods have not been proven to not be safe. So that is something to keep in mind. I already touched base how, increased insecticide use could hurt small scale farmers who do not have the funds for something like that, but also genetically modified seeds are going to be more expensive up front, and a lot of small scale farmers do not have those funds to purchase those, and if anything were to happen, they would not be able to get that money back if they're not able to produce the crop that was expected. And those are a few reasons why Mexico, for example, is fighting against GMOs. Even with a big push from the United States, they are very much afraid that it threatens Mexican history through the way that it threatens their native plants. Pollen, the way that corn is pollinated is through wind, and when genetically modified food mixes with the pollen of their native corns, it really harms and basically makes everything genetically modified in the long run. My last point here is that there are significant restrictions on GMOs in 60 countries as of now, 2023, and that is because the benefits do not outweigh the potential risks, and that is agreed on across the board. Basically, the world is hungry, and scientists can try to create foods that are healthier, that are cheaper to grow, that produce and offer more nutrients and require fewer pesticides. And although there is currently being testing done to prove the safety of GMOs, I would conclude that these may be feeding a hungry world now, but that does not provide sustainability for the future, such as soil fertility.